Good evening, everyone. Chris Hansen here, and you are having a seat with me on my YouTube channel. Have a seat with Chris Hansen from New York City tonight. It's been a busy day in our Onision investigation. You'll see in just a moment, we have an extensive and exclusive interview with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. That's the county in which Onision lives and where we knocked on his door a few weeks ago. I also spoke with the FBI today. And they are now making arrangements to get the laptop and cell phone of Sarah, one of the victims in this investigation. So that is proceeding. I'll have more on the rest of this in a minute, but first I want to get to the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. Ed Troyer, Pierce County Sheriff's Department, thanks for being with us tonight. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Listen, first off, you've got a situation with James Jackson, Gregory Jackson, known on the internet.
A lot of different names and different identities.
Yeah. You've had 19 calls to that house in 2019 alone. Is that unusual?
That's very unusual. As you know, probably most of your viewers, yourself and myself, we don't get a single call a year, let alone 19. And they have a lot of different types of aspects to the calls, whether there's turmoil at the residence, whether we're getting calls from across the country reporting possible sexual abuse, all the way from a kid falling out the window to fake swatting 911 type calls where people from across the country are using that address to send the police and our deputies to that residence. So anytime we go to that residence, our radar's up and we're checking things out.
You know, nobody condones the swatting. It's very dangerous for both law enforcement and for
everybody
in the residence, no matter what's going on there, no matter what the status of the criminal investigation is. So we need to caution anybody out there watching this.
Don't do that.
Under any circumstances, get involved in swatting. Let's talk, first of all, about this incident where the child fell out the window. Obviously, we're not going to identify the child, but it is the daughter of Jackson and his spouse, Kai. What can you tell me about that? I've seen the police report. There was an investigation. Do you know the status of that investigation right now in terms of any negligence or any criminal involvement?
What we do here is we have taken all the police reports from that residence and we have a detective that's putting them all together, including that case. And it'll be up to the prosecutor to decide once we get all the facts and information together. But, you know, it just seems we just keep going to the same place and we'll get all the information put together and we'll get it to the prosecutor. And then the prosecutor is the one that actually decides if charges would be filed. And that's in the process of happening as we learn more and dig deeper into it. They're not always fully cooperative with us, and we're well aware of who they are. In this particular case, the good news is that the kid's okay. By some lucky bounces and some different things, the kid actually is going to be just fine. It sure could have turned out differently, though.
It sure sounds that way. I mean, you talk about a 2 to 3 year old child who goes out a second-story window and lands on the driveway. According to the police reports, the investigators' reports said there were skull fractures and a hematoma. And there's a reference to the detective talking to one of the doctors saying that this was a touch-and-go situation for that child.
Well, you know, kids are very resilient. It turned out to start that way, but it ended and the kid got better pretty quickly. And, you know, kids are resilient. And not that the child didn't get hurt at the very beginning, but from what we understand now is that the child is going to be eventually fine. So that's good news.
Was there a referral to Child Protective Services in that case?
Anytime that we have an incident involving a child, harm, death, injury, or abuse, we always refer to Child Protective Services, yes.
And so that happened in this case?
Yes, it did.
And do we know the status? I know that that's a separate agency from the Sheriff's Department, but do you get feedback on that? Do we know the status of the Child Protective Services investigation?
We'll have to wait until we get them more information about what's going on at that residence. So they're still waiting for some information from us as we put it together, just like we'll wait for their investigation when it's done. But this is something that's continually ongoing, and a lot of the people that are involved in this are from out of state, so it's a little bit tricky. And also, you know, it involves the internet and it involves a slippery slope where we're having a hard time finding people that are actual victims. A lot of the reports that we have come from third parties who maybe recognize their kids that are involved in some of this activity, or people that are just seeing it on his YouTube channel. So what we need to do is try and determine actual victims and get them down and get them interviewed, find out what is actually going on.
If somebody is watching this and knows of a victim, has contact with a potential victim, or is a potential victim of grooming, harassment, enticement, the allegations we've seen attached to Onision, James Jackson, Gregory Jackson, what should they do, Ed?
Well, we do want to have calls, and we do want to call detectives, and we want the police reports, and we want to keep a file going on this because we need to determine what is actually going on there and what isn't going on there. One of the things is that some of these calls are coming in from third-party YouTube viewers that aren't even involved in the case at all. So the scary part here is we're not having mom and dads and people watching some of these teenagers and their online activity. That's where we can possibly find out people who directly they are and get in contact with them. And that's a good lesson to be learned. If you have teenage girls or even teenage boys online or going on to social media, you need to monitor what they're doing because this type of stuff's out there. I mean, he's not the only one. And there's a lot of different people, and it's very easy for people to become victims through social media and sometimes not even know it because they're just too young and vulnerable.
You know, we've interviewed some of the alleged victims in this case on this program, Ed, and you know, we hear similar stories about being young and vulnerable, impressionable, struck by celebrity of this guy who was, you know, a legitimate YouTube star at one point, and in some people's minds still is. And they get drawn in, and there is some research allegedly on his part and his spouse's part, Kai, on the age and whether or not these women are invited to come to that house or the previous house. Their airline tickets are paid for. They are encouraged to sign contracts. There have been cases where the girls' heads have been shaved. One was videotaped having a seizure, then that was broadcast on the air. You ever see anything quite like this?
Well, you know, we've seen a lot of different things with social media. We've even had homicides here that have happened on dating sites, and different people have met up on social media and terrible stuff's happened. But we've never seen somebody that's had such far-reaching goals and potential and has been able to get away with it and be able to get people to come and willingly participate in this. Now, at a certain age that you're under, you're still not the age of consent, and you're not able to make those decisions yourself. So that's what we're looking at, is finding out who these people are, putting a large case together and presenting it to the prosecutor's office. But anybody who thinks this guy's a celebrity or anybody whose kids are watching this particular person need to make that stop right away until we can get to where we need to get.
I spoke with an FBI agent today in reference to computer and phone that one of the alleged victims has that may contain some criminal evidence in this case. Is the sheriff's department cooperating with the FBI in one big investigation, or are they two separate investigations, or how is that working out?
Well, right now, even though it may seem like two separate investigations, unlike television, we work very well with the FBI. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll share information because we have access to information that they don't because he's local in our jurisdiction. And they have information that we don't. So once we get it all put together, there's a couple different paths. It could either go federal or it could go through the state prosecutor. And that'll be up to the prosecutors when it gets to that particular point. But we work well with the FBI. And our detective will be swapping information with them.
As you know, a few weeks ago, I went and knocked on his door in the course of, you know, our reporting to try to get his side of the story. He called 911.
Right.
That call was recorded. Obviously, we had access to it. Anything as a veteran law enforcement officer, anything strike you about that call or that day, or?
Well, the thing that strikes us most about that he was panicking. He called it in as unwanted stalkers from his YouTube site. He didn't mention that it was somebody that was coming after him for some of his bad behavior. He mentioned originally that he thought it was people that liked his fame or something kind of odd like that. Obviously, when our deputies got out there, they know the background of that residence, and they met you guys and they understood what you were doing, and then just backed off and, you know, let you guys do what you need to do.
Well, we were wrapped up. By the way, your deputies could have been more professional or polite. I explained exactly what we're doing. They did their duty and took the report, and we went. As you know, last week he went to court to try to get a personal protection order against me, and even though none of the camera crews or anybody went on the property, we had Mike Morse, our legal advisor on this show, and a guest on this show along with. And I just think it was interesting that anybody would suggest we do anything illegal with our lawyer right there in the street.
No, right. But the whole thing went away, probably at the advice somebody gave him. And one of the things that we are doing, though, is we're continuing to monitor that. And we knew that that was going on and what was happening. So we were here to make sure that the court and the people that were in the court knew exactly what the totality of the situation was.
There has been some talk, Ed, about whether the investigation is moving quickly enough, given that some of these victims have been, years into the making here. I understand, because I've been doing this for some 40 years, that it takes time to put these investigations together. What can you say to, assure the victims, the people following this case, that justice will be served in this matter?
That's why there's 19 police case numbers, and that's why there's that many reports, and that's why there's a detective working the case. One of the things that we're doing, that we're fighting, is people could be anywhere in the world, just not in our county, Pierce County. There's no borders on this case. And these tools and these social media apps that are out there allow people to reach around the world and victimize anybody. And we are actually way ahead of people when it comes to technology and the knowledge of how to stop these things. But, you get one chance to charge somebody and arrest somebody. And if you mess it up, then that's really bad for the victim. But we want them to know that there is a detective assigned. They are working with other agencies. The prosecutor's aware that this is going on. We're continuing to put stuff together and feed it to the prosecutor. And when the time's right, we would like to do what we can to put an end to this.
Just today, I received word from a young man in Australia claiming to have been a victim here online. Does that surprise you that somebody on the other side of the planet could be affected by this?
Doesn't matter whether you're right next door or you're clear on the other side of the planet. With these tools, you could become a victim. These tools will reach out to anybody and can make anybody join, be part of it. Just like you and I are talking right now from across the country, they can talk to each other from around the world.
Take me through the process from here. As you said, a detective has been assigned to these cases. The FBI is involved. There's a task force right there in Tacoma dealing with these kind of online sexual exploitation crimes. What happens from here? And I know it's difficult to assign a timeline, but as best you can, take me through it.
Well, we're also working with the state. The state has a sexual exploitation task force too, and we're just making sure that everybody's involved. We want to find out what else is out there, and we're hoping that people, through how you've made it aware, that people now know what's really going on there. And with the police presence there a lot, and people calling us and us knocking on the door, that it puts an end to it while we put the case together. So between the state, the county, and the feds, and working through these social media apps and getting the information from the victims and even the third parties that are sending us information about it happening is all part of the case. So once we get it together, we're continuing to work with the prosecutor for hopefully that where charges are filed and he's held accountable.
Does he continue to pose a danger to the community? And I guess the community now, because of, social media, YouTube, is the world. Where do you rank him in terms of?
Well, this is the first person that we've had in our county. We're almost a county of a million that's been so prolific around the world. We've also had, students on students and harassment from adults and men pretending to be kids, but we can get them wrapped up pretty good because they're going after victims and we're able to track them down because they're local. In this particular case, this is the most prolific and the worst we've had in our county. And unfortunately now, and this is such a good advice for parents that you give out too, your kid has a cell phone. If your kid has an iPad, or our little computer or any other type of device, they can talk to anybody in the world at any time, including guys like this, people like this. So you want to monitor their social media, and you want to make sure that they don't become a victim, or they end up being a third party watching him victimize other people. Either way, this is something, it's a new horizon. We've gotten really good at fighting internet crime and social media crime, but this is one of the larger ones that we've seen.
What do you tell them? I mean, you've given some advice here, Ed. I know from the predator investigations over the years and other investigative stories, you just really have to keep an open dialogue. But we're talking about, teenagers and the ability of a teenager to have a cell phone and communicate from virtually any place without any sort of parental monitoring. You want to think your 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old is safe. But we're talking about girls and boys all the way, 13, 14 years old here. What's the most important piece of advice we can share with parents?
The most important piece of advice, if they have devices and they have different social media apps, there's more than one. You go all the way from Facebook to Instagram to Snapchat, now even TikTok's coming up, where you have 8, 9, 10-year-old kids on social media through apps, and they're going to continue to evolve. Is be the parent and monitor those devices, limit their time, be able to look through the history, and make sure that they're not putting themselves in a position where they become a victim and they end up being a victim or seeing things that they shouldn't see. And that's part of being a mom and dad and taking control.
As a lawman, somebody who's been involved in these investigations for decades now, what responsibility do the social media platforms have in this? I know that's a difficult thing, and it's maybe not your favorite question in this interview, but
that's okay, because it's always changing. I have staff that go to social media conferences a couple times a year to keep up, and we go face to face with the people that run Facebook. We make contacts with them and people that run other social media, and we learn the legalities. What are the rules? Sometimes it takes a subpoena to get information. Sometimes it takes a flat-on search warrant. And then right now you're hearing about some companies that aren't even giving up, information with the judge's order. And that's pretty scary. So we're staying on top of it. We're way ahead of the game, and we're doing everything we can to work with the social media companies, because social media companies deep down don't want to be known as a sexual predator platform. That would not be good for them. And it's evolving, though. It seems like every few months there's a new trick. There's a new program. There's a new way or hack around things. So we have a staff that stays on top of it. And if we didn't, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have that many case numbers.
That's interesting. Such an interesting question. You want people to have their First Amendment rights and be able to do what they're doing. We're doing it right now on YouTube, and it's important stuff. What
but mom and dad don't have to give their kids their First Amendment rights. They can spy on their stuff and look at their stuff.
Exactly.
And we encourage it.
Exactly. What about YouTube specifically? Is it ungovernable?
Well, it's kind of hard, because these apps are considered platforms, and they're not, they argue they're not responsibility for the content. But if you look at Craigslist and some other things that are out there that were just basically fronts for prostitution, people have ruled otherwise, and they've been taken down. So I think the social media companies themselves want to be able to do everything they can to stop that from happening, and let people have their rights, but also not be a platform for victimization and suspects to go to. So with the ever-changing thing and ever-changing platforms, that's something we're all going to have to work on together. And that's why we have these conferences. And I can tell you that when we go to the conferences, these platforms are there, and they work with us very well. And if we wouldn't have been there, we wouldn't have been able to get a lot of the information that we do get, both in just not these type of cases, but homicides, wanted felons, and suspects. So it's evolving, but we're getting there. And the good news is that they're actually dialoguing with us, so we're able to work things out.
If somebody feels that they were a victim in this case of Onision or Kai, if somebody has information, what should they do? What does the Pierce County Sheriff's Department want people to do in terms of gathering information? What's the best way to reach you guys?
What we'll do is we'll send you an email link, and you can post that email We don't want them to call our 911 center because that'll tie things up. But if we give you an email and they send us their contact information on what's going on and what they believe is going on, we can reach back out to them.
Ed, I promise you we'll do that. I'll get that link from you and we'll get it up on all the social media and here on the YouTube. Is there anything else you want folks to know about this investigation?
Well, the investigation's ongoing. It's a complicated one. It's one of the first ones we've ever seen like this. So we're working with the state and feds, and we are moving forward. We don't want people to think that we're not taking this seriously.
Great. Ed Troyer, Pierce County Sheriff's Department in the state of Washington. Thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to bring on somebody who's been on our show before, one of the so-called victims of Greg and Kai, Onision and Kai, James, some people call him, he calls himself, Regina, who was brave enough to come on several weeks ago, and I wanted to have her back tonight to talk about the latest in the law enforcement investigation and a few other things. Regina, thanks so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So, big news out of Washington State. I'm good, thank you, by the way. Big news out of Washington State. The Sheriff's Department, as we knew, but they've gone on the record now saying that this is a pretty massive investigation, ranging from what happened to you and the other young women to the incident where the Jackson child fell out of the second-story window. First of all, your reaction to that as somebody who's been, well, victimized and has helped in the pursuit of justice here.
I'm honestly horrified and upset and scared for that child, and I hope for the best for their health and everything. I just want the best for those children.
And in terms of the investigation, we now know, based upon this interview, that this is a pretty massive case. They're looking at potentially dozens and dozens of victims across the world.
It's disgusting, honestly.
What the allegations are, but in terms of law enforcement confirming that there is this massive investigation, it's got to be somewhat of a relief to you, I would think.
100%. It's super relieving knowing that there's actually something being done about this finally.
So let's backtrack a little bit for those who perhaps didn't see your initial interview with us. How did Onision, Greg Jackson, James Jackson, and Kai first get on your radar? How did you become aware of them?
I first discovered Onision around 12 to 13 years old. I searched for a video online of how to kill yourself. And I came across Greg's video, and it was basically shaming people out of doing that. And at the time, me being young and naive, I felt that spoke to me, I guess. I met Kai around 15, entering 16 on Instagram, and we ended up being friends through there, bonding over a band, mutual liking.
And so you initially started following Onision because, is it fair to say you were in a bit of a dark place?
Yes.
And you were looking for, well, some help.
Yes.
He appealed to you, and then you started communicating with Kai. How did that communication proceed?
We commented back and forth on an Instagram post, and then it eventually went to DMs in relating to each other on likes and dislikes and stuff like that.
How soon before it became romantic in nature?
A few months.
A few months. And how far did it go? What did Kai say to you? What did Kai do?
It went as far as me thinking that we were in a relationship at one point. Nude photos were exchanged, sexual messages were exchanged, all of it.
And how old were you at this time, Regina?
I was 16 to 17.
16 to 17. This could potentially be illegal on Kai's part.
Yes.
What impact did this have on you as an impressionable 16, 17-year-old?
I essentially lost out on my childhood.
Explain that. How did that occur?
I spent every moment of every day wanting to talk to Kai, wanting to do what I can to be the better friend, to please Kai, to make sure Kai's happy before my own needs.
Did Kai exploit you?
Yes.
And did you ever talk about actually visiting Kai and Greg, James, Onision in Washington State?
Yes, there was talk around their wedding time. That was the first time we started talking about me visiting and doing photos for them for their wedding. And there had been on and off talk throughout the years. We just never got a chance to get around to it, and I wasn't allowed by my parents.
If your parents had allowed you to go, would you have gone to Washington State?
100%.
You were that enthralled with Kai.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
Did you feel at the time as a young woman, a teenager, that you were in love?
Yes.
And what role did Greg, James, Onision play in all this? Was he a part of this? Did he encourage the relationship? Did he also want to have a relationship with you?
He never encouraged a relationship with me and him, but he encouraged a relationship with Kai and me, or Kai and I, however. He did say that he wouldn't mind if Kai and I started dating.
Yet they were about to get married at this time. How did you process that as a teenage?
I didn't. I thought it was super awesome that I had his approval. I thought it was super cool that Kai was so interested in me. I thought I was all that, honestly.
You were communicating with and romantically involved with a celebrity of sorts.
Yes.
And that was pretty cool.
I thought it was amazing.
And you had an emotional connection, or so you thought, with Kai.
Or so I thought, yes.
How intimate did this get in terms of the conversations with Kai?
It got to the point where at one point, Kai asked me out and I said yes. And then a little bit later on, all of a sudden Kai moved on, and turns out nothing ever mattered.
How did the breakup occur?
It didn't. All of a sudden, Kai said, "Oh, I'm dating another girl."
Another girl.
And I was just like, "Oh, okay. I guess that's the end of that for me."
What impact emotionally did that have on you?
I was really severely depressed for a while over it.
Do you find it ironic that you first found Onision and Kai because you were in a dark place, suffering from a bit of depression, and yet in the effort to get out of it, they brought you right back to where you were?
Exactly. I was trying to desperately struggle to get out of it, even during the friendship and relationship. But the whole relationship was all about Kai. Everything was about Kai. Nothing was about me.
Looking back now with perspective on all this and knowing what you know now about the investigation, what should happen to Kai and Greg?
Kai should be incarcerated, as well as Greg.
Incarcerated.
Yes.
And if you could say anything to the authorities with whom I spoke earlier about this investigation, what would you say?
I appreciate everything that you're doing to get these people taken care of and behind bars, and I hope that we can get this moving very quickly.
And to so many of the other victims who are out there, what do you say?
We all speak, so you all know I love you. I care about you. I'm here for you no matter what, and we're all here together, and we've got each other's backs.
Now, it would be, in some respects, easier for you, Regina, to go on about your life, pursue your studies, your career, not be so public and vocal about all this. Why do you stick with it the way you have?
I want justice, and I'm not going to stop until I get it.
All right. Anything else you want people to know tonight?
Be careful. Do not interact with these individuals. You will get sucked in very fast, and it's very dangerous.
Does it shock you that he's still out there doing videos, which you would think would violate any standards put forth by any social media platform, especially YouTube, including YouTube? He's doing stuff with other streamers where there's all kinds of simulated sex acts, and he's doing videos talking about all kinds of bizarre things, and it's mind-boggling that this is allowed to occur. To me, at least. I don't know for you.
It's more upsetting than anything. Watching basically an abuser be supported on different platforms, it's really upsetting and disgusting.
Patreon took him down. Twitch took issue with him. Yet YouTube allows him to continue. What does that say about YouTube?
Shame on YouTube. Shame on the CEO. It's disgusting that they know about this. It's disgusting that they know and they still allow this to happen.
You watched as Onision went to court last week and attempted to get a personal protection order against me and another fellow named Daniel Sulzbach, who's a YouTube streamer who's taken on Onision. He was unsuccessful, obviously, and it was a bit of a goofy play, I thought, but this guy just continues to try to wangle his way out of this and to gain some sort of twisted sympathy on his different platforms.
It's ridiculous.
All right. And if you could say anything to Onision and Kai tonight, what would it be?
You're going down quickly.
All right. Regina, I appreciate you coming back with us tonight and revisiting some of this. I wish you the best. And I think it's important to remember for you, Regina, and for everybody else that, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of here. You were taken advantage of. And I think you and the other young women, and there's some young men out there too, are very brave. And I appreciate very much coming forward. And I promise you that we'll stay on top of this investigation. Regina, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Now we want to talk to our legal advisor, Mike Morse. Now, Mike, the Sheriff's Department confirmed that there's a major investigation going on into the grooming and the online activities, sexual impropriety, as well as this incident where Jackson's daughter fell out of the second-story window. Having stood out there with me in front of that house, your impressions of this?
Well, I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy that they're investigating what happened to his daughter. I'm happy that it sounds like the victims are going to get some justice, at least a very thorough investigation. And I think it's interesting that they are appreciative of all of the people who are following this case and all of the information that you're helping provide them with to perform a full investigation. I think it's crucial. I think it's important, and I think you're doing a great job. And I appreciate all of the people watching all of these interviews, sending you and I both texts and emails, because we are providing that information, and it's turning out to be crucial and helpful.
One of the things, as you know, the Sheriff's Department made very clear is it wants potential victims and witnesses and people with information on Jackson, Onision, to come forward. And they're actually, in the very near term, going to put together an email address where folks can send this information in, so they have a central repository from which to draw information for this investigation on the sheriff's level, the state level, and the FBI level. They're working together as a task force.
It shows. I mean, that's rare. I mean, that's rare, and that just shows how seriously they're taking it. It sounds like they're watching his crazy videos that he's putting out there. They're taking this really seriously, and I encourage everybody watching, if they have other information, to forward it. The people who have been sending me information, I'm forwarding it to you and to them, and just keep it up, because it sounds like there's more information out there.
Interestingly, I saw something come in from as far away as Australia, Mike, today that came through your office that we're dealing with now and passing along to the Sheriff's Department. I want to ask you, speaking of that area of Washington State, you covered extensively the court hearing that occurred this past Friday when Onision tried to get a personal protection order against me and another YouTube streamer named Repsiam, Daniel Solzbach. You have an interview coming up on a woman who received threats?
So lots of people have emailed me and texted me since that hearing. And one of the sad things that came out of it was this nice young girl, Nicole. You'll meet her at an interview on my channel that we're going to post later today. She was there. She was a member of the public. Courts are open to the public. She wanted.
Is she the one that took that famous photo in the elevator of Onision?
So there was two on the. There was two famous ones. They emailed them to me right away. She took the one with the 6 on the 6th floor. We have another one from another person on the 7th floor, and she just posted it on a small chat room on Twitter. It exploded. It got thousands and thousands of views. And then someone started setting up some fake Facebook accounts, which we verified were fake because they have no followers. They were immediately created. There's no information. And now she's getting hate messages, threatening messages, violent messages, and they block her so she can't report it to Facebook. We are attempting to help her do that, but she's not concerned. She did an interview with me, showed her face, and she explained why she was there and the messages and what she's doing about it. And it's sad. And it's sad that, either Onision's fans are doing this. She believes, I asked her who she thinks sending it, so stay tuned to watch that to see who she thinks is sending these messages. She sent me another one today after our interview. So it's not ending, but, it's something she's dealing with.
All right. One other interesting thing that I came across, Mike, is that apparently Onision or somebody related to him put an ad out on Craigslist looking for protesters to show support, offering to pay them something like $25. I guess nobody took him up on it.
That's pretty pathetic.
During the hearing.
It's pretty pathetic. I mean, from all of the people that I talked to, the attorneys on the ground, several people have contacted me. They were all just interested court watchers, people who are allowed to go to public hearings. It turns out they used to be fans of his and they're no longer fans of his, but I didn't hear about one protester, not one. I heard these were, fans of yours and just curious people who wanted to watch the proceedings. And I've never heard of somebody hiring a protester to help in a court situation. I've just never heard of that.
Attorney Mike Morse, thanks as always for being with us. And you can see more of Mike's story on his YouTube channel, Open Mike with Mike Morse. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Chris.
One other thing I want to mention tonight, and you probably heard that my former so-called web producer, I say that loosely because mostly what he produced in the end was chaos, confusion, and a distraction from our very important investigation and the sensitivity towards the victims in the investigation. Along the way, he thought it necessary to hit some YouTube streamers with copyright strikes. Now, he first did this this past summer, and he did it after explaining to me that it had to be done to protect the previous YouTube channel that I had. Subsequent to that, I realized that was not necessary. I asked him to revoke all the strikes he made then, and he did some of them. I don't know if he did all of them. I asked him never to do that again under any circumstances. He did about a month ago, and some channels were hit. I instructed him to withdraw the strikes again. This is one of the issues that I had with him and why he no longer works with me. But I want to make it very clear that now that I understand the ramifications, the motive behind it, perhaps, I want to apologize to some of the people who were hit. Joey TCAP, Yap Yap, Wes, Baked Salmon, and any others who took a strike from my former so-called web producer. I apologize. If there are any issues lingering out there, let me know. I'll address it as best as I can. Joey TCAP knows how to get a hold of me. And go through him. Anyway, with that piece of business settled, it is time for us to move on and continue this investigation. We will do so ethically and with a lot of energy. So I appreciate you tuning in. I will check in along the way, and I will see you next Wednesday when I have a seat. Take care.